Welcome to this panel on race, sexual orientation and identity in Victorian and Neo-Victorian drama. And we have two speakers here today, Kim Bird and Danielle Novak. And Kim Bird is going to start. She's a professor of drama in the Department of Humanities and director of the graduate program in interdisciplinary studies at York University. Her field of research is early Canadian women's drama, about which she has written several articles. Her book, Redressing the Past, The Politics of Early English Canadian Women's Drama, 1880 to 1920, won the Association of Canadian Theatre Research and Saddlemeyer Book Prize. Her latest work is an anthology of this drama entitled Blowing Up the Skirt of History, Recovered Plays by Early Canadian Women Dramatists, 1876 to 1920. And her paper here today is entitled Each Soul Has Got Some Stain, Some Hidden Mystery. Thank you.
Coming on the heels of all these wonderful papers, I'm a bit intimidated, but I altered this paper slightly for an international audience last night, so hopefully this will go all right, and I will remember to push these pictures. English Canadian theatre of the 19th century is a forgotten art form. A single series of 4 slim anthologies totaling about 20 plays were published in 1979. The first monograph dealing with this history was published in 87. The first scholarly journal dedicated to this work appeared in 1980 and lasted a decade. Suffice it to say that Canadians have only a passing acquaintance with their own theatrical past. My own books on early Canadian women's theatre are a rare expression of contemporary scholarship in the field. That didn't work. This is not working. So it's not. Thank you. How did you do that?
Because it was further up, so you had to click.
Thank you. Canada became a country in 1867, prior to which it was a vast tract of Indigenous land appropriated by France, then England, and then a fur trading business called the Hudson Bay Company. In this sparsely populated landscape, the theatrical traditions of the occupying European communities were mainly military into the 19th century. Increasingly, theatre by high society, like that mounted by the governors general, as well as amateur theatricals put on by schools, churches, and local organizations became more common. This is going by itself. There were also 2 important literary traditions that governed Canadian dramatic writing in the 19th century. The one heroic, historical closet dramas, and often printed in discrete volumes, and the other satirical political theatre published in various periodicals. At the beginning of the 19th century, when most parts of Canada were genuine pioneering outposts, performances were put on in community halls, military barracks, civic centers, bars, and inns. The conditions under which these performances took place were often degraded. Those working in them had to deal with rats, leaky gas pipes, box office swindlers, and in the wine rooms, music halls, and variety theaters of the swiftly established geographically isolated mining and logging towns like those in the Kootenays, Alaska, the Klondike, and Victoria, actresses known as box rustlers were hired to get their male audiences drunk. The more drinks they sold, the more profit they and the establishments made. By the turn of the century, theatre had changed greatly, and performances catered to an expanding and urbanizing population and a new theatre business. British and American touring companies dominated the entertainment landscape, and in their wake, approximately 40 theaters with a capacity of 1,000 or more opened between 1873 and 92. Many cities, small and large, boasted new theatrical venues. In some years, there were over 300 companies touring the country. To be profitable, theaters needed to cater to women with a purse, and to do so, they needed to appeal to middle-class notions of respectability. The finer theaters in larger urban centers engineered a level of personal comfort at this time through the construction of richly decorated salons, foyers, segregated seating, and elaborate restrooms worthy of their designation as places for women to repose and relax. This latter theatrical context was the context in which Amy Redpath Roddick began to write. Author of 9 plays, she was born in 1868 to the patrician class of Montreal society at a time when that city was the financial and cultural heart of the country. Her mother was Ada Mills, daughter of one-time mayor. I'm just going to skip ahead here a bit because here's the family. Her mother was Ada Mills, daughter of one-time mayor John Easton Mills, and a leading merchant in the city. Her father, John James Redpath, was the son of the great sugar magnate, John Redpath, who was among the most powerful businessmen in Montreal and in Canada. Educated privately with McGill professors, her diaries paint a picture of a new woman, liberated in thought, women-centered in interests. She supported suffrage, the Women's Christian Temperance Union. She snowshoed, skated, and learned to ride a bike. She was a genuine upper-class Canadian blue stocking, an intellectual woman who spoke 4 languages, read voraciously a wide variety of canonical and popular texts, including much drama. She went to church frequently, read the Bible, put on theatricals with and for her family, and attended a variety of live theater at a time when women's attendance at the theater was still risky business. In 1906, at the age of 38, she married the 62-year-old Thomas Roddick, the family doctor, dean of the McGill Medical School, and elected member for Montreal to the Dominion Parliament. When Roddick was knighted by King George V, he had introduced antiseptic methods into Canadian hospitals via Scotland. She became Lady Roddick. She and her husband lived in the Sherbrooke Street Montreal mansion where she grew up, together with Newfoundland-born Mary-Rose Shallow, who had joined the Redpath household in 1900 as a housekeeper. She soon became Amy's closest intimate. Whether there's any truth to the family lore that it was Rose in the matrimonial bed on Amy's wedding night and not her husband, Rose did not accompany the Roddick. Rose accompanied the Roddick on their honeymoon and on most subsequent journeys thereafter. In 23, the doctor died, and Amy and Rose continued to live together in a kind of Boston marriage. The history of women's use of closet drama, most of you know, dates back to the early modern period as the work of Marta Strasnicki, Catherine Burroughs, and Susan Brown evidence. Women's reasons for turning to closet drama differed from those of men. While the closet is coded in terms of concealment, withdrawal, and self-enclosure, says Strasnicki, the public, political, and theatrical is not an inaccessible opposite, but incorporated into the closet through the representational powers of the text, resulting in an unprecedented conflation of public and private. Given the extended gendered history of closet drama, it's difficult to disagree with Nicholas, or to agree with Nicholas Salvator that closet drama only occurs laterally when sexual discourses are ubiquitous and sexual identities are codified. Nevertheless, Salvator makes an important point respecting its ambiguous and ambivalent nature and how these elements of closet drama are very like the idea of queerness, which refuses to fit neatly into stable sexual roles. On the surface, Romance of a Princess is recoverable as neither lesbian nor queer in any obvious or literal sense. Based on the 12th century German legend that subsequently developed a long and illustrious narrative, dramatic, and pictorial European tradition, the king's daughter falls in love with his favored counselor, and the king is so appalled, so violated, that he banishes the couple from the kingdom. Foucault's question, why have we made sexuality into a moral experience, is at the heart of Romance of a Princess. The attraction of the couples violate the normative values of the society and call into question the subject of truth, in this case, the king, whose moral judgments presume epistemic certainty about the world. Romance is in part queer because it's a play about forbidden love, a love that is against the law and lacking the authoritative approval of king and court. The moral violation that propels it is outlawed sexuality that crosses classes. Emma is royalty and Agenhard a mere courtier. Despite his being elevated among his peers, he is still a hired hand, and he cannot be considered worthy of or equal to her affection, and never certainly of marriage to her. Emma and Agenhardt's mutual affection is outrageous. They are negligent of the legal statutes that prohibit their behavior, and even in the face of great and grave penalties, like that of death, both lovers willingly follow their emotions and embrace the consequences. I really have no idea where I am here. Gender in the play is also ambivalent. Heteronormativity demands that feminine females desire masculine males and vice versa. Yet in this play, our heroine is a female who desires a feminine male, and our nominal hero is a male who desires a surprisingly masculine identified female. Not the way she looks, but the way she behaves. As a result, there is a sense in which the difference between their sexes opposes the norm and is neutralized or rendered equivalent when it is juxtaposed against the meanings of embodied genders. Even if sex, gender, and sexuality have been teased apart and isolated within theory, the meaning of gender is nevertheless entwined with the meaning of sex in the context of desire. For instance, if and when a character's gender is or can be read as a stand-in for the character's sex, it is Emma who carries her lover on her back to help him escape, who kills the animal for their first dinner, who supplies the money with which they leave the kingdom. Agenhard, conversely, has a scholar's frame. He is physically slight and knows nothing of the fight and the fray. Agenhard is refined, he is an educated man, but not a man savvy in the material ways of the world. He has never traveled, foraged, or fought for himself, even though such occupations are distinguished with honors and prized among most men of his class. According to Lynn Huffer, queer theory has attempted to interrupt morality in its violent production and repression of sexually deviant subjects by articulating either new or negative ethics. The characters in Romance exist in a fundamentally Christian culture, but in insisting that their love is independent of apostolic laws and precepts practiced in Frankenland, this Christian love is also queer. There are strictures for judging the propriety of courtship and marriage. Emma and Agenhard engage in an anti-normative practice, a Christianity rethought and redeployed over the course of the play that acquires a normative moral force. This queer practice resurrects a new morality, precisely at the site where morality is contested, in and through matrimony. When Emma is reunited with her father, it is the legitimacy of her marriage upon which she insists. Of Ergenhard, she says, "Am I not his wife?" While rhetorically phrased, she does not intend her question to be rhetorical at all, but a statement of truth. This queer Christian matrimony is not performed by a male priest, but a lay woman, Emma herself. It is not a public covenant, but a private one. It is still a holy sacrament, but conducted by no authorized clergy and not in the church. At play's end, Charles declares to Hildebold, his archbishop, that the church has proven its strength and that the children will be re-blessed, or further blessed, he calls it. But it is Christianity that has widened its moral horizon. Its ethical boundaries expand from a restricted interpretation of canon law to what Ergenhard terms simple faith. Within this new queer ethic, the woman does not pledge obedience to her husband, but values the moral principles of close companionship and liberty. Queerness, as Salvator states, does not designate a static site of lesbian and gay identity, but gestures towards transgressive moments between and among positions of gender and desire. Romance presents a genealogy that breaks with the past and inaugurates a new history, arguably one that reconceives the King's Court and Christian morality as feminist. It overthrows the conventional lines of patriarchal filiation. It overthrows royal heritage with its unbending Christian edicts, even when Emma and Ergenhard return to Frankenland. Here, as in much queer work, queerness exists in the transitional space between the private and public. It threatens the rule of law and social order embodied by the king, as I've said. It represents forbidden knowledge and power in practice. For these reasons, Emma and Ergenhard's love must be censored and suppressed. As Whitmer says of queerness generally, it can mobilize marginalized peoples to disestablish restrictive cultural systems and in their place manifest realities that extend the borders of prevailing hegemonic ideas. So it is with our paramours, whose outlawed attachments jeopardize the existing authority of the royal regime as they know it and forced upon them prerogatives of new forms of governance. In elaborating the recovery of feminism, for a queer critique, Huffer adapts the ideas of Luce Irigaray and asserts that patriarchally focused Western culture is founded on the murder of the mother and the absence of maternal genealogy at the level of the symbolic, something about which we heard yesterday. Emma's mother, Fastrada, is dead, but she is a present absence in the play against which Emma fights. She is aberrant and violent in the wielding of unnatural power and expresses no intentional solidarity with her daughter. Fastrada is less a mother in the play than a lover witch. Her beauty was her dower, and she seduced with it. Her most potent secret lay in the ring woven into her long tresses, the magic power of which she had slaved to the mighty King Charles. She threatened social disorder. Like witchcraft, queerness, sexual queerness, is considered dangerous in that it disrupts familiar and accepted behaviors and boundaries of gender and sexuality. So it is in romance. Witchcraft threatens to perpetrate conflict and raise territories and puts women in charge of the patriarchal and Christian state. Witchcraft is most potent in the forest, where it turns the social world upside down, where social station and wealth have no currency, where nobles must rely on peasants, where priceless royal gems have no worth. Even the king is profoundly altered in a forest dream where he sees a transformation of the mother as witch into the woman as goddess and participates in a feminist myth of solidarity. Associated with nature, the earth with wind, she is an animistic supernatural deity that spontaneously produces all types of life, weather, plants, and magical beings. Much like the ethos of this play, with its combination of Christianity, magic, and witches, queerness exists in that space that is transitional, that threatens the rule of law and the social order. It represents forbidden knowledge and power in practice. For this reason, the love between Agenhard and Emma is outlawed and must be suppressed. By embracing magic, Emma expresses what Huffer calls ethical queer feminism. She re-symbolizes the mother-daughter relation. She represents a new kind of maternal genealogy in which a woman is not residual and derivative. She is a genealogy that idealizes a new kind of maternal ancestor and becomes the equal of men. Romance still presents a genealogy that breaks with the past and inaugurates a new history, arguably one that reconceives the king's court and Christian morality. It overthrows the conventional lines of patriarchal filiation. It overthrows royal heritage with its unbending Christian edicts, even when Emma and Agenhard return to their homeland. The king calls Emma the Esther of our court, insinuating she is pliant and cooperative. But just as Esther is called upon to save the Jewish people, Emma becomes a woman of enterprise that alters the world to suit her. Just as Amy Roddick herself bridged two worlds without completely embracing either, without completely giving up either. So does her heroine. Emma reconceives Christian morality as feminist, at least for a time. She overthrows her royal heritage with its unbending Christian laws, and when she returns, both are altered to suit her. Drama, and I'll end here, is a fictional form in which Roddick explores the interstices of something like queer experience. It provides spaces in which she expresses deep, powerful emotions and a range of same-sex thoughts and feelings that do not easily reveal themselves or give themselves up to scrutiny or censure, like some forms of nonfiction. Redemptive history, as it expressed in closet drama, is premised upon a notion of coherent lesbian identity that is transnational, transhistorical, and rooted in a beguiling essence that begins in Sappho and courses through to today. It is not just a beautiful fiction. It's a political act to restore, repair, and regenerate a lonely, isolated, and illegitimate group for the present in which it is read. It lies in the promise of community and of consciousness of oneself as part of that community. It is the surety of a heritage, a mythology, and traditions that inspire no less than they heal those who have suffered. It is an arsenal of stories like this one with which to resist the heteronormative status quo. Thank you.